more households got their hands on phonographs. At the same time, radio was starting to catch on, creating an early rivalry that would come to birth the record industry as we know it today. By the 1920s, the fledgling industry was starting to boom. The biggest stars in early Broadway theater found themselves in recording booths and cut songs that in turn found their way into homes across the country. A nation that had once been defined by local folk scenes or touring vaudeville acts started to slowly creep toward a shared musical culture. The first darling of the upstart recording industry was Al Jolson, whose dramatic belting and saccharine love ballads established the first wave of American popular music. He sang his way into the hearts of white America, but he did so by building on a legacy of racist minstrel performances. Like many of his early pop contemporaries, Jolson was best known for blackface performance. Blackface was a style of minstrel performance that had gained popularity among white populations in the mid-1800s, thanks to a tradition of touring entertainers. The entire practice was built around white performers embodying deeply racist caricatures of black people while covering their face with grease paint or shoe polish. One might be tempted to look back at Jolson and his ilk and dismiss them as a forgotten relic of a backward time, but the reality is not so simple. Racist performances created much of the model for a century of pop music stardom. You cannot have a true accounting of American musical history without discussing the racist traditions that birthed the music industry. The early pop stars were gifted and charismatic performers, but a very real aspect of their success was the fact that white audiences loved to watch them ridicule black communities. Even as racist performers were forming the foundation of the industry, new forms of black American folk music were leaping forth from the Mississippi Delta, poised to conquer the musical world. The decade was still young when an explosion of blues records seized the industry, soon to be followed by seminal early recordings in country and folk. The roots of American popular music were starting to take hold across the country, delivered to Americans of all walks of life through radio and phonograph. But there was one musical movement that reigned supreme through this exciting era of early American popular music: jazz. As the American economy boomed, jazz erupted from the New Orleans bayou to stake its claim as the great American art form. Jazz seized the attention of black and white audiences alike, putting early dents in America's long-standing racial barrier. By the end of the decade, jazz had nearly subsumed the entire recording industry and become the undisputed soundtrack to one of the most exciting eras in American history. For all of the innovation that happened throughout the 20s, the decade will forever be seared into many people's hearts as the Jazz Age. 1923. Downhearted Blues. Bessie Smith. American popular music is a vast river that stretches out across time and space, branching into near-infinite diversions. Some of its tributaries are thin and winding, others are vast and churning, but each and every branch flows back to the same headwater, the blues. Born from combining traditional West African folk music with work songs and spirituals, the blues began to take shape around the turn of the century. The blues spent its infancy growing up along the Mississippi Delta, serving as a voice for the everyday life of the black diaspora. It wasn't until 1920 that blues truly started to explode. That year, singer Mamie Smith recorded a song called Crazy Blues for OK Records. That song sold over 100,000 copies and kicked off a nationwide blues craze. Performers from across the South saw an opportunity and started to head northward to seek their fame and fortune. One of these performers was Bessie Smith, who would soon be crowned Empress of the Blues. You don't get to lay claim to such an auspicious title without fighting a few battles. Luckily, Bessie Smith knew how to fight. As a queer black woman living in the Jim Crow South, Smith had to spend much of her life fighting to justify her very